In today's episode, I'm going to walk you through what I believe should be your first miniatures game if you've never owned one before. World of Tanks.
You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
Thanks for sticking around. I'm Carlos with the Beans and Dice podcast. It's a podcast about how we game. And the way I game and get a lot of enjoyment is through miniatures gaming. Now, it's not everybody's thing. I know that. My buddy Rob, who's also on the podcast with me, is not a miniature gamer. But I feel that this game, World of Tanks, by Gale Force 9, is a good entry-level, inexpensive way for you to determine, is miniatures gaming or historical gaming something that maybe you'd like to get into. So what I want to do is introduce you to what comes in this box, as well as how the game plays, and give you my thoughts on it so you can make a decision on, should this be your first miniatures game? So why World of Tanks? I think World of Tanks should be one of your first miniatures games if you haven't done one because of its low entry cost. We're talking about $35 on average for a retail copy through your local gaming store or online, and it gets you 4 tanks right off the bat. Gives you a game that can be played in 30 minutes or less for you and one other player, or even more players if you choose to play a bigger skirmish. And what are you doing in World of Tanks? What you're doing is you're taking your tanks and you're giving them upgrades to improve their stats and their abilities and their combat prowess to attack other tanks, dodging around terrain such as woods or buildings, and rolling dice to attack and defend. And if you put damage through, you draw cards from a damage deck that can cause no additional damage, but it can cause special ability impacts, or it can cause things like critical hits, which do double damage. So it's a multitude of different types of damages that it can occur, like a lucky hit for 2 damage to destroy your tanks. And it plays in about 30 minutes, which makes it fun and fast. In the $35 box, the starter box, what you're going to get is you're going to get your rulebook, which is going to give you everything you need to play. You're going to get a deck of damage cards, that critical damage cards. You're going to get upgrade cards for your tanks. Now, it does tell you to open this pack first because it's got some of the more simple upgrade cards to help you get into the game. And you're going to get tank cards for every tank that comes in the game. There are 4 tanks in this game. You're also going to receive punch boards that have your tokens as well as terrain. You're going to use a punch board range ruler to determine how the tank moves. You'll have damage tokens to indicate damage that the tanks receive. You're also going to have these track markers to indicate how fast your tank has moved. Your tank speed will impact how your tank is able to defend itself. And you're also going to receive these identity tokens to help you separate or identify different tanks if you and your opponent have the same ones. So it's everything you need to get started in miniature historical wargaming in about $35. If you're anything like me, you didn't come here to talk about punch boards or rule books. You came here to check out cool tanks. So let's talk about some of the tanks that you're going to get. You're going to get the Panzer IV for the German army. You're going to get a T-34 for the Soviets. You're going to get a U.S. Sherman M4A1, the tank that won World War II, and a British Cromwell. These tanks, these models actually come from their Flames of War line of tanks. It's a game that I've played before, and I had to assemble and paint all of my own tanks. You can see here, fully assembled, fully primed, ready for stickers or a wash or a quick paint job if you choose to. They come with a fully articulating turret, which is actually used in the game. It's a mechanic in the game regarding aim. Each nationality comes with their own very distinct color, right? So there's almost violet green for the Soviets, the olive drab that you're used to seeing in all your World War II movies for the U.S. Sherman tank. I mean, look at the detail on this tank. Pre-primed, pre-assembled, no work. This is why this game is such an awesome entry-level game. Look at all the detail work in this Cromwell alone. See all the rivets from where they put all the panels together for the armor or the armor plating. I mean, this is you're set. You buy it, you're set, you're good to go. Those are the tanks that come in the game. Each tank is going to come with a tank card. It's going to tell you how much it costs in the top right to add that tank to your squad. It's going to give you its firepower, its survivability, its mobility, which is its speed, and its initiative, which determines in what order it goes. You'll see the hit point value on the bottom center of the tank, as well as what upgrades you can attach to that tank as crew members. The firepower is how many dice you roll when you shoot. The survivability is how many dice you roll when you're attacked or shot at. This is the M4A1 Sherman, which is the U.S. tank. Now, although this game does have nationalities for its tanks, you don't have to play the game in a historical basis. It is based off of the World of Tanks game, which is an online shooting tank game. In this game, it models that in that you're not historically recreating battles. What you're doing is you're playing against an opponent for fun, and you can take whatever tanks you want to create your squad. You can take some Panzers along with some Shermans all in one team, even though they didn't fight together in World War II, because this is a game about fun. You're going to find the rule book a joy. It's small, it's compact, it's easy to read. The gameplay rules run from page 6 to page 18. So the majority of the book is the rules, about 12 pages. And then you've got rules for creating platoons, custom platoons, as well as the multiple scenarios that come in the game so you and your opponent can have different play styles or different play feelings each time you play the game. The game is played in turns, where each player, starting in initiative order, using the lowest initiative first, is going to maneuver tanks. You're going to use this arrow here to maneuver tanks by placing the arrow anywhere along the perimeter of your tank, and then you can pick up your tank and move it to the end of the arrow. That would be 1 speed movement, and if we did it again, I would have 2 speeds of movement. And what you would do is you would give it a token to indicate that tank moved twice in that round. That's going to help that tank with its defense when it's time to fire. And now that the T-34 has taken its movement, the Cromwell, because it's a higher initiative 8, goes after the T-34. So the Cromwell knows where the T-34 is at and will use its maneuver to move 1. And you can place your tank anywhere on that arrow such that it's touching the end, or anywhere on the arrow, to do its 1 maneuver. So it's going to get 1 token for movement. So now let's talk about the shooting phase. In the shooting phase, it works different than the movement phase. The tanks are going to go in initiative order, starting with the highest initiative, working its way down to the lowest initiative. So in this turn sequence, the Cromwell is an 8. The T-34 Soviet tank is a 6 in initiative, as you can see here. So the Cromwell is going to go first. It means it gets to shoot, an opportunity to fire before it gets fired at, hopefully destroying the T-34. When it comes to combat and shooting, the first thing you're going to do is check for line of sight. So what you're going to do is look at the turret on the shooting tank and point it at the defending tank. And then you're going to determine if that turret, following that line, imaginary line straight down the turret, can see any part of the tank without being blocked by a building or by forest or another tank. In this case, this Cromwell can see any part or some parts of the T-34. And what would happen here is the Cromwell will get to roll its attack dice equal to its firepower. The Cromwell has a firepower of 4, so it would receive 4 attack dice. When you attack, what you're looking for are critical hits, which are the World of Tanks symbols, or regular hits, which is a symbol of ammunition puncturing armor. So you would roll those 4 dice to determine what the value of your attack was. And in this case, we've got 2 hits, no critical damage. And that would be the attack from the Cromwell to the T-34. But the T-34 gets to defend itself. And the T-34 will roll a number of dice equal to its survivability. So it's 1 die for survivability. Then it'll get dice equal to the number of speed that the tank moves. So it moved 2 in that last round. So because it moved fast, it gets 2 more dice. And then finally, it checks to see if it has cover. And the way to check for cover is if the attacking tank cannot draw a line from its turret to 3 of the 4 corners on the defending tank, that's 3 of the 4. If I cannot draw a line of sight to 3 of the 4 corners, then this tank would get cover. I can see him, I could see this corner, but I'm not able to draw a line through to this corner or this corner. So the T-34 would receive cover. T-34 would roll to see what results. And again, the T-34 received 2 hits. When the T-34 rolls hits for defense, it gets to cancel the dice off of the attacking player. So these 2 dice cancel the 2 hits, meaning that the Cromwell did not put any damage through. Had the Cromwell been able to put any damage through, he would then take, the T-34 would then take tokens equal to the number of damage that it punched through. Be 1 damage marker. Up to its life value, which is 4, that would destroy it. In the event that a critical hit breaks through, so if the T-34 is not able to cancel a critical hit, instead of taking a damage marker, the T-34 would draw from the damage deck, the critical hit damage deck. So if a critical hit went through, we would flip, and this one says 3 damage. So right off the bat, we know you're going to receive a 3 damage marker, and it says ammo damage. You discard all ammo upgrade cards from this tank, and it's +1 damage for each card discarded that way. So had the T-34 had any upgraded ammo cards, it would take additional damage. So with this attack being a critical hit, you would see the T-34 taking a total of 3 damage and having to discard its ammo damage. So that's how critical damage works. So you will continue the battle in this manner, going from the movement phase, where we move in initiative order from lowest initiative to highest, and then go into the shooting phase, where you shoot from highest to lowest, and then you go into the command phase. In the command phase, this is where you're going to determine if tanks were destroyed. You're going to determine if victory conditions were achieved, meaning the game would end. And you're also going to attempt to repair any special damage that you received from the damage deck that allow for repairability. And some abilities allow you to do things in the command phase. And at the end of the command phase, you would then start the next turn phase, going back to movement phase. Everyone moves in order again, lowest to highest, then to shooting, highest to lowest in initiative, and back to the command phase until the game is over. There really isn't much to say about this tank game. It's light, it's fast, it's simple to pick up and teach, and it's inexpensive. This is why I think it's a great start. The game really begins to get its depth when you start going into building list and building army list. And what you're going to do in that is use the tank's value, and you and your opponent will determine up to how much list building value will you be allowed. You're going to spend that to buy tanks of different varieties. You're then going to add upgrade cards to those tanks. You're going to get all these different upgrades for different tanks allowed. Might be things like an enhanced gun lane drive. You can get a camouflage net, which helps you defend yourself. And for the British, there's even pudding and tea, which was going to help you with repairing damage and with your bailed out crews. So there's a lot of different options that you're going to see in the list building aspect. The game's really going to flourish when you get to the expansions. In the expansions, that's where you're going to see a variety of new tanks. You're going to see a variety of new upgrade cards and combinations of upgrade cards that you can use to build your list, so you and your opponent can have a never-ending variety of games and matches using the provided scenarios along with the starter set and some expansions. You've got a huge ton of variety and replayability in this game. So this is an introduction to World of Tanks by Gale Force 9. I completely recommend this game.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.